You may be wondering, because in a couple of years, in about 3 years' time, will mark the 80th anniversary of the Railway series that was written by Reverend W. Awdry. And that was also around the time when Thomas was first brought in. Although not in the books, although he would come after the first one, after the three railway engines. But this is before Thomas even was thought of being an E2. Now, as we all know, or some of you newer fans of the fandom may not know, and for some of you who have been in the community for a long time, might remember that the origins of Thomas actually began when he was actually a J50, which of course was a small model that Robert Awdry made for his son Christopher when he was ill. Now, over the last couple of years lately, and I'm not kidding you, in the trains community, Thomas has been seen in the J50 in various different formations and, of course, different liveries. And it has come to my attention with very curiosity and big interest that I feel that the time has come for us Thomas fans to kind of bring back the origin of who Thomas originally was and what he was supposed to look like. And I feel that using the J50 version of him is going to be quite an intriguing use to have. And of course, I've taken it upon myself to go along with this. And I'm sure some of you guys in the community might do the same for other reasons. Now, even though I will admit I was never a big fan of the J50s in reality, but at the same time, they were quite intriguing steam locomotives, but they were never on my favourite tank engine list. However, though, seeing Thomas in this form, and because he was built that way for his son Christopher, which Awdry made during the war, it raised my suspicion a little with curiosity. And of course, seeing other users who have made their own variation of, did he start off as a J50 or did he become that like prior to being an E2? Or, some people theoretically think that. I mean, there was one user who did it once in a fanfic, which I thought was fantastically well written. Pardon my yawning, guys. Pardon my yawning there, lads. I didn't sleep well. But besides all that, it's really intriguing to see that Awdry's Thomas is starting to get a little bit of recognition, but I feel that the time is upon us now to kind of bring that in, and I think it's time that maybe the timeline of the Railway series, or if anybody else has their own opinions of using Thomas in this form, have free will to do so. It would be the ultimate tribute that Reverend W. Awdry would have wanted. And I, for one, think it would be, a splendid idea. And I'm sure some of you might be rolling your eyes right now thinking, you prefer Thomas as an E2, he's better that way, that's how we all recognised him. But as far as I'm concerned, it's better to use any version of him, regardless of his TVS form or his RWS look, whether he was an E2 or was a J50. It doesn't really matter, as long as he's still the beloved character that we've all knew and grew up with. And that to me is the big key to use to make Thomas popular. Although granted though, I mean, he has suffered a couple of times in recent times where he's introduced to a new generation who don't quite understand him as much as we do. And I'm not saying cough cough the bloody redub, cough cough, It's just like I said before, it's just that the origin of who Thomas was as a J50 with the words NW, which meant nowhere, which is what Awdry wrote on him. And of course, he would have the number 1 written on him because, that's just how it was. I just feel like it is pretty cool. And I do feel that, in this modern time, just bear with me, what if Thomas would become a J50? Oh, damn, my jaw's killing me. Gah. What if Thomas actually became a J50 later on, maybe, or maybe he could have been that way prior to becoming an E2? Now, this is something I think could be helpful for creativity, and you fans can have your own opinions because you're entitled to. I feel that the time is now, and of course, this is going to be something I've wanted to do for a long time. Although I do regret in hesitating it a couple of years down the line previously, because at the time I just wasn't interested. But over the years of looking at it with more curiosity and seeing fan arts, as well as seeing, sprints of his J50 form, and of course, a few fanfics of it, and even a few audio stories that have been done, and of course, the trains community doing a hell of a good job of putting his J50 form to life. It kind of made me understand that this could perhaps be something unique and very special. So I've decided to put it upon myself that I will be planning to do a couple of stories on Thomas as a J50. And as for some of you who might have seen in my recently intro series test, which I'm collaborating with a good buddy of mine, let's just say that this is something set in an alternative universe, although it's still set in a modern timeline like we're in today. And of course, I am currently writing the fanfic of this, but it's going to be like as if it was set in a Railway series book. Like, say if Christopher Audrey had done another one, and the story would contain like 4 stories. So this is kind of like I'm dealing with this variation. It's very similar to what we see, Of course, Thomas is still our beloved cheeky little, tank engine that we all knew, just that he's in a different form. Although in this timeline that I'm planning to do, which I am going to hope will come off as one of the best I've ever done, it's going to be a little different. I mean, and I'm not saying it's going to be dark because, it's not like the whole Timothy thing or 311 or anything like that I've done in the past. This will be a little different compared to what you're used to seeing. And of course, Thomas will be the main character, but there'll be others who will be involved. And some of the trains you will be seeing may not look quite the same as you might be familiar with. Like, I'll give you a couple of Easter eggs. I mean, Timothy's in the background, as you saw in my intro. That's because, he's going to be there, but the idea is, was he there previously? Hang on a second, guys. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, lads. I thought I heard someone knocking on the door out there. Hang on. Any cases, though, as I was saying before, Timothy is seeing the movie, like in the introduction of my Thomas J50 miniseries. That's because it's giving you a little idea that he was there to start with, although when's he going to appear in is up to me. And of course, there will be some other engines who will look slightly different compared to what you've been seeing. It's kind of still like set in Railway series, like in Tang, like Audrey style. But the way Sodel's going to look is going to be a bit unique. I mean, the Farcar branch is still roughly the same as it is. It's just that the roster is slightly different. And some of the engines will have a very different appearance. Their personalities are somewhat still the same, which is unchangeable. But the way how this story is going to be told is going to be very unique. There will begin a time where it will start off like, how did Thomas end up getting this formation? It's because, we're going to get a backstory to this that leads up to it. And of course, I'm still continuing on with the first story, which is called The Really Useful J50, which is going to be the first, story to actually tell it. It will, show how Thomas was, but it basically tells of who he is prior, later on, like how did he get that form? It's just going to be very intriguing. We will be using a previous model of who he is, and then eventually afterwards we will tell the story of how he gets it. It's going to be quite intriguing, and I am looking forward to this one. It's just something I feel like the fandom needs to get more a bit familiar with, because as I said before, the J50 Thomas has been very, very underrated in the minds of everybody in the Thomas community. Although everybody does know and learn about it, but it hasn't been seen as much. So I feel like this version needs to be more recognizable. It needs to be presented more. And like I said before, it would be something that Reverend W. Audrey would be very, very proud of. It's something that he needs to be very thankful for, because this is how he started. And I personally believe this is what he would have wanted. And anybody who's a fan of Thomas in today's time, or would have been back in those days, and like going way, way, way back to the early years, like way back in 1945 into the early 50s and onwards, you know, I do personally think that the J50 version of him was very underrated and perhaps wasn't too well received as much. And I feel like, that's why they liked him as an E2. But granted, Audrey loved Thomas regardless of who he was, whether he was an E2 or was a J50. But I feel that the J50 version of him has been, like I said before, very, very underrated and has not been recognizable by a lot of people. So I personally feel that the time has come, that this version of him needs to come alive more. It needs to be, delivered on, and it would be something really, really nice. I mean, it's going to confuse a lot of fans. Like a lot of fans, who are casual could get very confused, But at the same time, this is creativity going on a whole new level. And I, for one, believe, and I say that very, very not as often, but I do believe that if we started using the J50 version of Thomas, it could change a lot of things that the fandom might end up coming to like. And I do feel that this could be the time to change the momentum and could help bring the fandom back its own 2 feet, and we could inspire a new generation. And I do feel like that this could be perfectly done. I mean, we're always learning newer things as we go along. And yes, Brandon, I can see you in the chat box, mate. If you want to, I've got the link here for you to pop in. Yes, I see what you're saying there, Brandon. Very clever. Yes, Robert Jensen, I can see you're showing the pictures of the J50 as well, but don't go too far on yourself. I can see you what you're doing, pal. Jesus, Brandon, you and your messed up words, mate. And you're still calling Sodor sonar. Jesus, it's not like the dinosaur is made out of a big, big rotating dish or something. Jesus. I don't know what is going on in your head, pal. Ginger Jesus, man. I don't know why. Yes, Robert, I know. That's just him, okay? But in any cases, though, it could change a whole lot of things. I mean, well, Jesus, don't bring Merlin into this. He has nothing to do with turning him into that just because he's a magical engine. I think, guys, there's a link in here if you want to come in. Pop in and pop on board, and we can join in this discussion because I'm liking where this is going to go. There was actually one, I think, I might do a shout out here. Hang on. I'd like to give a shout out to one user who I know in the Thomas fandom who did a hell of a good job. There was one particular story that he did, and I think it was, if I've got my facts correct, I think it was Lucy Dollar. Yeah, I think it was him. Yeah. Lucy Dollar did some sort of a fanfic on, well, it wasn't his original fanfic, but he actually kind of adapted a story where Thomas began long ago as a J50, and Gordon pulled him at high speeds, and after that, as in Thomas and Gordon, and then after that he had he was suffering from multiple problems like brake failure, he had pains in himself, his fire wouldn't steam properly, and he couldn't perform the way he did prior. And the Fat Controller decides to kind of send him to have something to solve his problems, and later on, afterwards, he comes back rebuilt into an E2. And that kind of made me wonder, this actually kind of reminded me of what happened to Henry, because when he came off, he was a one-off design failure. And, he suffered from having problems with coal, he couldn't breathe properly, he had a smaller firebox. He had Welsh coal to help him with that. But then after the Flying Kipper, he was sent to crew, and he came back in a new look. And honestly, this is kind of what the J50 Thomas into an E2 version of him kind of reminded me of so much. So perhaps there's something that Thomas and Henry might have in common. I'm not so sure, but that's what it did remind me of. But at the same time, that was a very clever idea of how did Thomas become the most famous Blue E2 that we all fell in love with. So I thought that was a good idea. But I'm kind of going with a reverse style. Like, what if he got actually built into an J50? But unlike some of the design failures that they had, what if he didn't have all that problem and he had kind of like special specifications so he wouldn't have suffered from it? Robert, we don't want to compare James's special collar. I mean, yes, it is laughable, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Hey, Brandon.
Good evening. Uh, I am here.
Okay, Brandon. As soon as I clicked you in, you changed your name from Brandon and you called yourself the Token. Is
Well,
that Transformer related?
actually, that's an actual story that I can't remember the username, but it's a story that focuses on James, and it's quite
Oh,
it's quite a story. It's an hour long. It's like a horror film sort of thing. It's an audio story that was released a few days ago, where
okay.
yeah, basically like well, it really focused on James and Edward. Um, and basically the token it's a special train that is taken every month. Um,
Oh, I see. I thought you were referring to the tokens that they take online side. Like when the driver takes a token from a online only, like those early Signalman years or whatever it was called, where
well,
they only get that sort of token, or you talk about something completely different.
oh, uh, well, basically, let's see, where is it here? Yes. The token was released on October 16th, 2002. Um, it was, let's see here, and let's see. Yes. Uh, Essentially, in a nutshell, uh, like this is what the token is. Uh, Excuse me. It's on my share screen actually.
Okay, I'm just going to put the share screen up so I can take a look. All right. Oh, so that's what it's called.
Yes. Yeah,
That okay.
Master of the Lemons. Like it's quite a story.
I'll check that out later on. Actually, I'll
It's
check it out.
yeah, it's almost a 2 hour story. It's
And
all
yet,
audio. It's all audio.
oh, I
Um,
see. So it's not like a. Oh, okay then.
you
I
know,
was.
I'm I'm not sure if you're allowed to adapt this story. I mean,
I'm not sure
this
if you
does
will be. It does look like a privatized story, but if anybody does attempt to adapt it, then props to them as they do.
yeah, it's highly recommended. And actually, this guy actually commented on my adaptation of The Woman on the Viaduct that I released a year ago, saying that it was an awesome story and that using the figures was so much better than using the in-game figures in trains. Um,
Well, I'm gonna say this, Brandon. It's gonna be really awesome, like what we're planning to do, and I gotta say, lately I've been getting a lot of intrigued comments with my use of a J50 Thomas, but also the fandom have actually been more recognizable than what we've done in the past, and I'm still getting good praising for the Ghost Train thing, the 311 thing, and just to let you know, I am going to plan that stream again. Oh, just to give you a heads up, everybody. Yeah, that's going to happen at some point. It might be this weekend. It could be next week. But I will admit it will be sometime before Halloween. I could do it in two different parts, or regardless of what will happen. But just letting you know, Brian, in case you want to know if you want to join in on that one too,
oh
because
yes, of course.
there's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to give that another go. Because of what happened the year before that all got screwed up. Yeah, so I'm going to give it a second attempt, and we will have a fun and a little bit of a laugh as well. In any cases, besides all that, This whole thing with the J50 Thomas again has caused a lot of intrigueness, which I didn't expect. However, though, may say this is what Audrey would have wanted, and I'm going to go ahead with this. And you've got the J50 Thomas as well. And just to give you any questions, are you intrigued about perhaps using this version as well, perhaps, maybe, for anything you might have any intentions with?
Well, that it's interesting you mentioned that because, like, I mean, I will in like in the near future, I will use that J50 Thomas to pretty much like for flashback purposes like and maybe I had this funny idea where like basically like almost kind of in tribute to like the 2015 two-pack that was released by Wooden Railway where
Oh,
like
yes, I remember. Yeah, the one that I'm just looking on right now. The one that was released, where was it again? Let me see, because someone did a video on it. I think there's one guy, yeah, the one that was a Thomas Engine gift pack where it showed like, was it the one that had like a golden wheel Thomas and a golden smoke box, and the other one was his J50 underneath? Is that the one I'm referring to?
yeah, pretty much like because the thing is um I will say this. Um, excuse me. The thing is, like, my idea is where Thomas, like, you know, and I know someone already did this where he was traveling, TBS Thomas met Railway Series Thomas and J50 Thomas, like, basically, but my idea, like, will be sort of in tribute to Back to the Future where, where, like,
Nice. I like that idea.
well, sort of, but thankfully no engines will fall off cliffs or whatnot. And as for the DeLorean, I
Hmm.
have no idea. Well, Lady was meant to be a GWR class, I will say, before she was turned into a special mixed traffic engine.
Or
Um,
you
for
could say, or basically you can just call her an industrial engine because
well, that would be Kate, of course. Kate's
well that is Lady. You're referring to. I'm just referring to her in her sort of workshop form, which I do kind of like more. Don't ask me why. It just kind of looks good. Maybe as a stunt double, as if Lady, aka Kate or Lady, whatever the heck you want to call her, could be that could be her like RWS form, like her Railway Series look. It's to separate from the TBS.
oh, yeah, I see. I mean, because I mean, well, that is actually very true. Tony Trains that little engines can do big things. It was
Yes,
very
they can.
evident. It was evident in Magic Railroad. It was evident in the Royal Engine. It was evident in Adventure Begins, and it was evident in Legend of the Lost Treasure, where where Thomas was sent to, where it was almost sent away to Railgate after. Oh no, wait, Railgate didn't exist in 2015.
No,
um,
that was in 2017 or 18 or whatever it was before Victor did
20
the event series.
yeah, 2015. Speaking of Victor Tanzik, he finally released a Reddit Railway story.
I just
Again,
saw it. I saw it, and I'm just, as I always say, speechless. But I did get a bit of a laugh. It's just how he reads. It's just how
um,
he reads the stories, how he does it at the end, and his reaction too.
okay, so that's interesting facts. I'm looking in the private chat. Hank was supposed to be a Union Pacific. He was supposed to be 3985. I,
Really,
okay.
I didn't know that either.
Uh,
That would have been
Derek
like,
Derek was supposed to be named Patsman and also supposed to be a BR class 14. So kind of like Iris in a way.
I
Okay.
didn't realize that. I will admit though, Hank being a Pennsylvania K4 is a lot better. It goes with him.
Well, you'd see, like the thing about Hank, his his twin brother Sam was also in like a proud engine, a large engine. Um,
Indeed.
I mean,
Um,
yes,
but then
that was evident. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. Yes, it's evident that Bertram was supposed to be a tank engine, but that didn't happen. So,
no, but we
um,
have seen it. But we have seen what it would have looked like thanks to the trans community, and it doesn't really matter if you want to use Bertram as a tank engine or as a tender engine. It doesn't really matter. It's Bertram. That's who he is, regardless. It's the
I
same
mean,
thing with it's the same
I mean,
thing with the J50 Thomas. Whether you want to use his TVS or his Railway Series or his J50 form, it's Thomas regardless.
yes, I mean, because at the end of the day, Bertram and Smudger are one in the same because, like,
Well,
like
that doesn't. Well, no, in my can that isn't the case, Brandon. Just to confuse, not to confuse anybody, because in my can they're not related. Although I did mention in one of my early writings, Smudger was built to look like Bertram, but instead, if you remembered in my original one of my original old stories I did about Crimson, I kind of killed Smudger off because he was the one who fell off the bridge.
yes,
Instead Bertram was a tender engine and not a tank engine, so I could separate the two.
yeah. Well, the thing is like, yeah, and that's understandable. And yes, I know I referenced Thomas 123. I knew that Bertram never, like, he never said anything in season 5. Murdoch being maroon red, that would have been something if he was in the Railway series. Uh, I did know that about. Well, actually, that does remind me of one of Barry Trux's stories about Arthur and Clarence. Uh,
Yes, indeed. He
so
was,
that's
yeah.
it's kind of ironic that you know, coincidence might have been because, like, the fact that 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 Arthur's interaction with Clarence the Van was quite something. I mean, although it's a shame we never saw him again. I'm pretty sure that Clarence was probably a one-off character, and I
Maybe
mean,
he was. Maybe he was a one-off character, perhaps. Who knows? Maybe that. But actually, I think in a lot of the modern day series, a lot of the characters that we did see did become one-off characters, which is I can understand, but at the same time, it would have been intriguing. Like, it's funny how, like, take Molly for example. She was only seen in a couple of episodes, didn't speak much. It was almost like she was partially a one-off character, but at the same time, you get what I'm saying here. And of course, Arthur didn't make much any appearances afterwards, so he was partially a knockoff, I guess, because back in the hit entertainment era, they were kind of like coming and going with characters, which were good. They were using more of us RWS engines again to create realism of which I thought was very unique back in the day, and I don't regret that. But it's just that they didn't do much with them afterwards. Like Spencer's the only one out of all of them, besides Emily as well, who have been used this day still. Well, if you don't want
well,
to, if you don't want to count the cough cough reboot cough cough, but you know,
since season 7, like, Spencer and Emily have had more appearances than, or well, and well, they've had more appearances than Arthur, Murdoch, Fergus. Uh, like, I mean, it's just, and I mean, we got great stories out of the characters that didn't get much potential in the original series. I mean, Emily's Armada, that was a great story.
yes, Emily's
About
Armada. You mean you can thank uh,
the
that
Barry
one.
the Barry Truck wrote that story. It's basically the story where Emily is trying to take charge of the trucks at the docks.
There's that one, but I was talking about Emily's fight for survival, which was done in the model series where she survived in a carriage shed for like what 55 years.
Oh, you're talking about Jimmy the Ginty.
Yeah, in that one, yeah, where she was in that carriage shed for 55 years. I felt like to me that's probably the best origin story of her, how she survived all that long. So I think that makes perfect sense, and I'd like to consider that to be canon. I think for a lot of us, maybe, even though we haven't seen much of it in Victor Tanzik's, even though we did get a bit of a hint when she explained it, when we found out that she and Henry are married, quote unquote. We didn't actually get a backstory of it, and I do feel personally that look, I don't think Victor Tanzik will like the idea, but if anybody can pass the information on, this is just a suggestion from me to him. If you were to hear this, I think we should actually get to see a backstory of a much younger Emily and, of course, a younger Henry, and see how their romance played out. And of course, just anybody hearing about it, I'd like to see how it played out, and and how did they interact, and just it would be quite intriguing to see another backstory, because that's what I like a lot about Victor sometimes because we've seen him do this a few times. So I feel like this could be quite intriguing if he ever did, and it could help boost his modern series. It's just a suggestion in terms of being creative.
I do agree, and I will say, like, the fact of the matter is, I mean, oh yes, yes. I mean, well, technically speaking, with the whole Emily and Henry thing, kind of showed the marriage of how it would have played out and whatnot. But of
No, I
course,
meant like no. You showed the aftermath. Let's not go there again. You're right, Brandon.
well,
We're talking about,
I showed the marriage part in the aftermath, but
but we
I know
haven't
what you meant.
seen, but we haven't seen the pre, like how did it all build up to the point
Oh,
where
the
it did.
actual okay.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
referring to.
yes, but yes, Tony Trains, we have seen the SCPs of Sodor. Two episodes have been released. Uh, one about Boko, and then there was one about Proteus and the Lucky Lamp. So
I
it's
knew
going
the
to
lucky, I knew the lucky lamp
Very
of course has something in
interesting.
common. Hey there, Tommy Trains. Nice to see you
oh,
again.
Tony Trains, hello.
Hey, pal.
Here
Oh
he
wow.
is.
Oh, you lucky son of a gun! You customized it a J50 version of him.
It's
Remember. And also,
oh
I actually
yes.
got this one for over 300.
Wait,
Oh damn! I've got that still. That's how I got the original.
It also has this covering. Oh, shit.
Same here with mine. Same here with mine.
oh yes, that's
Except the
classic. Mm.
except the blue thing is very damaged, but it's still intact.
Yeah.
But wow, I've still got that still, and that's how I got into the Railway series. Like in total, like the whole books that Audrey wrote. That's how
Yeah.
I.
I always wanted the Caulifell Railway.
Yeah, well, I'm not really a big fan of mountain engines that go up there, but I was okay with it in Thomas and Friends because it looked good because I liked it for the illustrations of it. But any
Well,
case,
we must understand that Godred's accident was based off of the actual like the Lattice tragedy back at the same time as Godred's tragedy.
that is
Um,
Yeah.
true.
I mean, now of course, like I'm sure Caldy, when he told the story to the narrow gauge engines, I'm pretty sure one, it was true, and two, I think it really kind of like, you know, you know, I'm sure it made Duncan and Sir Handel realize the importance of mountain railways because, I mean, at the end of the day, like even though like in the story Broken Wings, we do see what actually happened to Godred, uh, and how and how his demise came to be.
You mean
Yeah,
you mean a bad lookout?
no, but the story Broken Wings by Narrow
By narrow
Gauge.
gauge. Yeah.
Oh, that one. Sorry, I didn't
I still
realize
haven't
that.
heard it yet.
Well, actually, if you go to the 4F Productions channel, uh, he adapted it. You'll see the story there because now, yes, even though sadly Narrow Gauge is done with the horror audio stories, I'm pretty sure he has something else in the works. And
Well, who
I
knows what
Pretty
mean,
he'll.
much like who 22 Tesla is actually making audio stories of tales from the scrap sightings like that.
yes,
Maybe,
actually,
perhaps
And the
he's
most
taking it.
disturbing story, which is the Kildane experiment. Like, god damn.
Yeah, basically, we could
well,
say
it's basically
it's safe to say that Tesla 2 is kind of perhaps maybe taking over for Narrow Gauge in theory, maybe. That's why he's handing it
Yeah.
over. And I'm actually old friends with him, because the whole
well, the
Timothy
thing
thing,
is with
Yeah.
the
we're
thing is with the
still,
Kildane experiment.
that
With the
was
Kildane
scary.
experiment, I do believe with the Kildane experiment, I think that was his Tony Tesla's take on the ghost engine that you see in the Halloween episode for like about 2 seconds.
Hmm.
Where now, of course, we all know that in the canon of the fandom, that is actually Dudley.
That's his name?
Yeah,
If you remember, okay, so basically, if you remember the story Demons by Barry Truck, which was adapted by Carson, the
Oh
engine
yeah.
that, the engine
that's
that,
right.
the engine that, that the spirit, the Spectre engine that said you disturbed my sleep to Diesel and scared him off, that's Dudley.
That's really cool. Oh, nice.
Oh, that's your take on Dudley, or
No, this is the siren engine. This is
Oh
the
god.
siren engine.
Oh
the
god. If you're
siren
gonna,
engine.
Yeah, with
okay.
the siren, this one.
Oh, I see.
Basing off Siren Head by Trevor Henderson.
Basically, when you said the word siren, I was immediately thinking of the anime series Azure Lane, which has the
No, I
alien
said
sirens.
siren.
That's what I mean. They're still called that too. They're just called sirens. They're like an alien technology that came from another world and invaded humanity's waters and oceans, and then the ship girls of the World War II and World War One come together to battle them off. I was kind of thinking, wait, now they got to come to the aid of the railway.
Well,
Gee.
it's funny you mentioned the killed in experiment engine because if you listen carefully, one of the whistles is actually Afton's whistle, but it's lower pitched.
Oh, that
Yeah,
whistle, and also the creepy whispering like.
yeah, yeah.
That is
Basically, I don't know
that
what's
is
more creepy, that or the half engine's wails of pain.
I think
Wales
they're
of
both.
Pain, I would say. Jesus bloody Christ.
I'd say they're both, but I'd say they're both. But like I
Well,
said before, I mean, the community, as we said before, me and Brandon were right. Things were going to get a little bumpy and more tougher, but we've had a big rebound lately ever since. I think it was because of what Tassia and the others did, especially how it all began with the Wondering Engine, which I think is what kickstarted it all off.
oh, you mean the wandering coach?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Wondering
Yeah.
Coach.
because
Yeah.
now,
That,
of
I
course,
think that's what
Everyone like
that's
makes trains adaptations using Jeffries, but I think the Red Engine is a different one.
well, the thing is because now this was before an actual Afton model was made, and now in my adaptation, I used the download station version of what Afton's basis was. Um, Now, of course, I wasn't. Of course, you're not allowed to add faces or change lettering, et cetera, on the DLS version. But thanks to Timothy R3D, Afton was released. He also comes with a coach, and there you go. Yes, I did see the episode about. I did see that episode about from Daniel Alsalup's series about Dudley's character being because of course we all know Dudley. He's basically like Devious Diesel but a steam engine, trying to trying to survive. Trying to
I
survive to
haven't seen
Cutter's
it yet.
torch and trying to put Bear on the hot seat, which he
yeah.
almost does.
Basically, he's basically showing his steam supremacy against all. Well, basically, he was like everybody else at the time when we were never in favor of diesels. Back when we did have a hatred to them, because
Yeah.
we can
Filthy
understand.
Oilers.
Look, we can understand. We all it all comes to all of us. I mean, we can. And I know for a fact supremacy can be wrong and lethal in ways, especially in human terms. But when it comes to like steam and diesels and whatnot, it's kind of an understanding why some can be better than others. I mean, the Thomas universe kind of dictates it a lot more better. But at the same time, I'm always going to be a steamer. But I feel like, because I've said this before, and I said this about, and look, I know I'm going to say this, but to hell with it. When I used to be with, the older team that I was with, which Brandon knows what I'm thinking of, I actually did admit saying that in America, both steam and diesels can work very well and handy together because, it's America and they know what they can do. And steam engines can actually be equipped with diesel braking and they can control it behind them when they're on the move. And I've seen us do it in the the UK do it a few times. But they're there to help just in case if our steamers were to fail or break down, they can take them back to base and take it onwards afterward. So that kind of helps get over my sort of, my dispute of my, what's the word? My kind of not so likeness towards diesels in the UK. But at the same time, they all had their usefulness and,
Mhm.
but I'm still sticking with Steam all the way regardless. But that was just something I feel like Dudley may ever understand afterwards. I
Yeah, well,
mean, I know
the thing
he's
was,
it's just that he hates diesels. He has diesel supremacy, and of course, we all know how diesel was like that back in the day
Yeah.
when diesels were being revolutionary. Except we didn't come up with them until the somewhere in the late 50s or so, because the Americans were way ahead of us. But at the same time, they were very dearer and expensive to make, let alone experimenting on. That's why steam lasted for as long as it did for a while. But at the same time, when you sometimes with diesels, it became more like they may have looked modern and more cleaner and quieter, but they just never had that same enjoyment enthusiasm that you would do if you want a steam engine. But
Yeah.
that's the
I
problem.
understand.
They look good on the outside. They would look good and colourful, but they just didn't have that. It's the same thing with the Americans. They may look nice and colorful and looked good, but they never, had the same power that a steam engine would have had. But at the same time, they have their usefulness and they can work pretty well.
Yeah.
It's a 50-50 when it comes to us in the United Kingdom. But nowadays, there's no point in being supremacy towards either of them, because any transformation can break down. Even the modern versions of trains can have the exact same thing.
Well, yes, I mean, because now the thing is, it's interesting because Dudley's story origin takes place just after Super Rescue, or just after when Oliver was saved from scrap.
Super
Now,
Rescue, but the events that happened in that Enterprising Engines, that would have been in 1968, just before Flying Scotsman went to America in 1969. So that's got to be
yes,
so that must be where the timeline takes place in the late 60s.
yes, for Dudley's backstory. Now,
Yeah.
of course, now in the stories of Ari Learns the Truth and Our Dark Knight for Bert, then of course that it explains the whole dark, story of the fact of both Steam and Diesel used to being useful, and then they're on death row basically. Um, Even though
Yeah, the
like
machines.
yes, I do feel sorry for Ari in that story where all the diesels that were waiting to be cut up, they were all like begging for Ari to save them all or save at least one of them. I doubt they were saved in the end. I think they were all scrapped. So
Yeah.
I mean, even though like, at the end of the day, like at the end of the day, Ari was just trying to get that scrap train back to Sodor to get ready in the morning, and there you go. Like, I mean, like you got to learn the hard way sometimes. It's just like it's just like the truth about scrap. It's just like the whole
Yeah.
thing about
Indeed.
Diesel. It's even though in
Although,
my even though in my version I had Duck being the main character and not James, because it would have made
well, it
sense
makes
for
perfect.
Duck being this. It would have made sense for Duck being the main character and not James, because the whole Duck and Diesel like
Yeah,
saga that.
that would have made sense. Yeah, I think that makes
Well,
better sense.
basically a what if like a what if or what would have been.
Yeah, like finally it could have helped Duck and Diesel's rivalry come to an end. Although we kind of seen it happen in I meant in Wild North West's version, which I'm glad to say that I mean we've seen it happen in NWO 1991 as well, where Diesel did kind of show that he has a good side, and it took a bit longer. But I do like how Wild North Western made Diesel more likable and understanding. To me, this is kind of like what I was waiting for a long time with, like, what if he was a good guy? Or did he start off as a good guy and he was a bad guy afterwards? Because
Mm.
I don't know. Maybe in Diesel's case, he's got a bit of a strange case. He's nowadays he's like walking on a what's the word? He's like walking on a grey line, like he's in between good and evil now. Kind of like in
Well,
Star Wars, he's like
Yeah, pretty much like in Thomas 1/2 Henry 3's episode, where Diesel sees he's pretty much obsolete.
yeah, he's kind of
Well,
like
that's true. That's not until Diesel saves Salty and Toad from a fiery building that almost exploded, and then that's what gained the confidence of Sir Topham Hatt at the time, or would have been his father at the time, to bring Diesel back to Sodor. Because
and
I
he was
mean,
given it. And we saw that when the Fat Controller 4, who's still the current controller of today in the
So
timeline,
Richard, that is.
yeah, so Richard,
would have been Sir Stephen actually,
Richard's going to
because
be the fifth one.
Oh,
Richard's going
my
to be
bad.
the fifth one, I think, in the timeline. But Diesel did say, he said, just because he was going to go to court, he said something like some really good stuff, and he says, and then so topping out 4 said something like, I never heard those words would come up from you, Diesel. You truly are a reformed engine, and I thought that was quite nice. And I do believe nowadays, I think Diesel's less and less becoming more like he's like, even though he's dressed in black to resemble evil, I guess. No, just no pun intended, guys. Just because because back in the day, if you had the color black and red, or red and black, or whatever, I always thought that resembled evil, because of its coloring, you know.
well,
But at the
those
same
colors can be
time,
interpreted in different ways.
it can,
Because
that's what I mean. Because back in the day, growing up, like you could look at Darth Vader, his arm was basically like charcoal dark, and he has a red lightsaber, and all this, all the Sith Lords, in Star Wars, in a way, they have a red lightsaber, and they all wear mainly dark clothing to know that they're in the dark side. So I kind of thought Diesel, in a way, was like a darkened character, yet to resemble that he was like a bad guy, and it does kind of make sense in a strange way. But again, it's good to see that, it's funny actually, we haven't seen much changes to him. Like, he's pretty much the same in Railway series, although his TVS is a little smaller, but he's pretty much the same in his Railway livery. But now he's a
Yeah.
bit different. He hasn't had any changes done to him. He doesn't even have the British Railway logo on him, which was quite cool. Although it does make me wonder, could he have been one of the many prototypes of his class? Hence why he has no number and why he's got no.
Actually, there was a video by someone who actually made a theory that that one of Diesel's numbers could be the real Diesel.
I'm just thinking of that because we've got a lot of his kind who still exist today still.
Actually,
So I'm wondering
actually,
if
it's funny you mentioned that
could he
because
still be around? Like, could the real Diesel himself be with us today still?
actually he is still around because in Tom's Run 23's one of his journey. He went to crew this year. He was on a journey in crew in at Crew Works. He was on the train, and inside the carriage, you could see on the other side of one of the sidings, you could see Diesel on the other side of the line. In same livery, same basis.
Except
Now,
the only difference that would have been if it would have been having different side rods. Because most of them I've seen have had red, and I think that may be the
well,
difference.
the side rods were not red. I will tell you that, but it will.
The ones that go around the wheels, because the real
I know
Diesel
what you mean.
I saw one who looked like Diesel a long time ago, and he looked like him, except he was more, jet black instead of like, and he had like red side rods on him, and he was, that was the difference.
Here's the link to
It's
that
funny.
video.
It's funny you mention because you see now all Class 08s had different color schemes and liveries. There's still a good chunk of them that are still around today. I mean, now, oh yes, of course. Thanks for mentioning that in the chat there, Billy, about the end of Wrath on the Rails, where Diesel 10 like sacrifices himself to defeat Wretch and Phil Bogaston.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole
He did.
of course, let's just say that I have all right, for the last 2 years I've had a project in the works, but the main character that I'm trying to make for trains will not export properly. So I've been trying to export it so I could get it completed, but sadly the export has failed, and I'm going to have to start all over again with the model piece.
Well, do your best to make it even more better if you can.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, Brandon. I really am.
Yeah,
Did you know
Also,
in the Railway series that there was an N word in the story of Henry the Green Engine?
we do not go there, Tommy Trans. We do not want to go back there, mate, because we already know. Okay, even though
I
Audrey never
apologize.
intended to, even though Audrey never intended to, it was just that was the mind philosophy at the time, back then when it was a thing. Okay.
I apologize for bringing that up.
No, but to me, I actually remember reading it once, and I do recall, and I will regret it, because I remember reading the original when I was growing up. But at the same time, I never questioned anyone about it. But I did feel like there was something that wasn't quite right about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was a. Let's just say, the Reverend did experience a bit of controversy, but he made up for it.
He
Like,
did, and he got away with it. He would never mean to. It was just the writing. Just think about it. In today's time, he'd probably
Society back then was very different.
back then the culture between us, two race culture was very different when we couldn't all get along. Like there was look, as one of my good friends would say in the old team I was with, every decade had its own problem.
Yeah.
But I do believe it would have been a lot worse during the 60s and 70s and 80s. I'm sorry if we've gone off track here, ladies and gentlemen. Just bear with me. We're just getting out of the way. It's just that's how it was. But as far as I'm concerned, it was for the times, and that's how Sodor would have reacted too. Oh, hey there, Ashley Boyle. Nice to see you. The other thing is, though, again, at the same time, any of us would have, you got to understand that's how it would have been back then. In today's time, if Reverend W. Audrey had done what he did then, just think of the ultimate clashing everybody would have been doing nowadays. It'd just be throwing out, say, fits and rage, like going into, pardon my French, Adolf Hitler meltdown.
Mhm.
Yes, but
Yes, it
that's,
would. That's
that's
just
true. But
And he would have had several savage backlashing, like all of us have done for the last couple of years. But look, that's just the timing of how it was. But it was just an easy mistake, and back then it may not have been as a. But any cases though,
uh,
anyways. But just to avoid further clashing on that, like I said, but that kind of was also happening, with what's the word again, with the whole thing with steam and diesels, there was a bit of
Yeah.
prejudice towards them.
now it's funny that it's funny. Sorry, I'm just looking in the chat here. It's now the Markland engine. Like, yes, you do see him actually in season one, but actually, if you want now, once my share screen's activated, basically, I don't know if you've seen this guy's series. Once it's activated, um,
Yes, it just took a while to upload there. Brandon had a bit of a signal problem.
basically, if you've seen Kiefer Adams, he's a great Thomas audio storyteller. One of the stories he did was about Markland and what came to be of him.
Mm.
Okay, that's intriguing.
Yeah, basically, like this connects actually to the Tugs universe because in Tugs you do see Markland, but
Oh, in the Tokyo
Yeah.
universe, you say? Okay, then that's
There has
intriguing.
been a debate if either Thomas and Tugs do have the shared the exact same universe together.
well, because if you look closely within the bubble, that's Markland's basis
Oh
as we
yes,
Yeah.
it
see.
was.
Yes, indeed. Puffa.
Because now, of course, you do see him visually in off the rails at the end, where you see him like fly by you see those two pairs of lights that like pass the ditch. That's Markland. Like you don't
Yeah.
see him, but you see the lights. Like now, of course, throughout the like throughout the model series, you see like scrap parts of him, you see cameos of him, but you never hear any mention. Now, of course, in Victor Tanzig's universe, the Markland engine was the main bad villain or one of the main villains of Stories of War. Um, that was until the surviving one was sent was sent to be placed on trial. I think that's what happened. No, wait, it was a
That's a very
replica.
No, that guy there in the background. There's the German engine himself. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's Markland. Yeah,
If Mark, here's an idea for you. Before we go back on the actual topic of the stream
Yeah,
of
indeed, he
J50
was
Thomas,
in the season one
uh,
episode "Trouble in the Shed."
before we go back to the use of a J50 Thomas, which is the main stream, we've gone off a little bit, but that happens a lot in my streaming. But here's an intriguing theory. I mean, if how cool would it be if Markland were to make a comeback and we could actually have somebody who could actually, because he's obviously German. What if they actually could find an actor who can speak good English but has an accent, but speaks with a heavy German accent, and he can speak in two variations if he wanted to, just in case.
Yeah.
that's understandable. But again,
Again,
like
internationality, like we saw in Calling All Engines. We've seen all different versions of engines coming from different countries, and I thought, what if Markin could come back? That would be quite nice.
that actually when the Great Race came out, I really initially thought that we would have seen Markland partake in the shunting competition. That would
Yeah,
have made
me
sense.
too. Yeah,
That would have made
Mm.
sense for Markland and not actually be in the actual race because if Markland was to race, he would have exploded on the first lap. Like I mean, like basically he would have like overheated or not overheated. He would have actually burst his safety valve and would have broken down, and that would have not ended well.
Mike Gordon.
Uh, but at the end of the day, I mean, go check this guy out. Kiefer Adams does great Thomas stories. He
he
actually
does.
did one surrounding Henry actually a couple days ago.
I
Henry
actually,
and the
I actually took a look at that. I actually think that was really superb.
yeah
I really
yeah
thought
Henry
that was.
Henry and the Fox Hunt. He actually got an inspiration
Oh, I
from an
haven't
old
seen it yet.
like. Now the one thing I was amazed about was Beatrice, the road train. That's amazing. That really you know gave some excellent memories. okay, the Splodge episode was amazing. It really tied into Magic Railroad because,
Yeah, I
like,
like that part.
That made a lot of perfect sense. I
it
will
would have
admit.
made more sense that way than just have the actual what would have been where, because in this story George actually defends himself and not work alongside Diesel 10 and Splodge. Um, although, I mean, and of
It was
course it explains
basically,
about Sir Handel and then Boko and
it
and
was
his
basically George
disappearance.
was basically out for himself.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, pretty much. And then, of course, yeah, and and this one, oh yeah, this does talk. It talks about the passing of the torch from controller to controller, the Northwestern
That was
beginning.
I really think that was one of the best ones ever. Like the father passing on to his son.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought that was really well. I think that was one of the best well written I've ever seen in ages. Like, because it's not very often nowadays we see stories with the Fat Controller and his family, and yet we see this with his father passing on his knowledge of his leadership of the railway to his son. And I think that was a very well written story. And I do believe that we should see more of this. Like, we should see more of what it was like. Even we should see like what it was like when the first Fat Controller took over, prior to like how did he pass the torch to his son prior to the other one? Like, how did that
that
go
would
down
make
prior before he
that.
died?
That's very true. I think that would have been a cool story to see. And the Ghost of Boulder Woods was just a funny, hilarious, spooky story. And Snow Go Duncan, oh my goodness, that was actually it. Really, it's basically it felt like it kind of felt like the Thomas and Terrence all over again, but
It did
the
actually.
narration.
It did give me that. Did I actually agree with you, Brandon? That kind of made me remind me of that all over again from season one, unless they weren't trying to rip it off.
No, I think it was heavily referenced. Let's just say that heavily referenced because
Hey, look who's with us! Look who's decided to pop with us, Mr. Brandon.
wait, who's that?
Hello, Ash. Welcome aboard. Hey, Brandon. Don't worry, it's okay. Hey, Ash, how you coping? He's music, I think.
Can
Hey,
you hear
Ash.
me? All
Yeah, I can
right.
hear you.
Yeah.
Had a
Hello.
5 second delay. Welcome on board the new stream, mate. This was a bit unexpected. I've got a bit shorter, but hey, we're having a lot of
Hello.
fun. We're talking about different subjects around here, and Brandon and Tommy Trains have had a really good back and forth, and we've kind of discussed a few bits and bobs. But this
Hmm.
is mainly about using the J50 Thomas that I've got planned, which of course we'll be collaborating with as well. But we're talking about other things, because it happens a lot on my stream. You got to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sounds good.
It does, yeah. I've got my 311 thing planned. It's going to happen. I've actually kind of figured it's going to happen sometime, maybe this weekend, but it's going to happen prior to Halloween. I can tell you that much.
God, I even
Hmm.
I haven't made a Halloween video yet.
Just saying, if Brandon and you and everybody else want to pop in, you can. It's going to be, we're going to give it a second attempt and see how that turns out. Oh, and Special Funnel is here with us too. Oh no, it's Rebuilt. Oh no, it's Rebuilt Patriot Productions. That's his name. I thought it was him. So, anyways, guys, like I said, I'm going to show you the bits and bobs afterwards because I've explained numerous times that it's time for Audrey's J50 Thomas to kind of get more recognition because we're only 3 years behind prior to the 80th anniversary. So I feel like the next couple of years, Thomas should have a different limelight. He needs to have what he was prior. And I feel like we're in a situation where it could help the fandom get back its own 2 feet and creativity can take new heights. And I feel like this is what we're going to do.
Hmm.
Yep.
And as you saw in my intro, it's had a lot of intriguing comments, and which I did not expect, but I was liking where this is going to go. And there's going to be more on the way soon enough. And for any of you guys who may be knowing this 4-part story, it's going to be like 4 stories done.
Like in the Railway series.
Yeah, as if it was in a book, except Thomas is going to be. It's like in the modern, yeah, not like that though, but like in 4 parts and smaller versions. And it'll be like in a modern day style of, yeah, kind of like that. That's right, Tommy Trains, that kind of style. Kind of like what we saw when Shunter Productions was doing his ghost storying at the time, but he did it in 2 different parts. And And funny enough, we have two of the cast members here online right now who are actually officially casted in this one. Brandon doesn't even know who he's going to be casted yet in, yes, but he is officially in. I can officially tell you. And even Ash here as well, I can tell you live in front of everybody that you are
Well,
officially
boss
in there
man
too.
buffers.
Yeah. Yes, Ash, you are officially in this casting apparently. I just don't know who we're going to give you yet, but you are officially in.
Oh, well, we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, I mean, the last videos we've collaborated in have done tremendously well. Like, the results were just flabbergasting.
I know, 2,000 views in under, what, 3 days?
Yeah, that was your
Something like
recent
that?
one you had. Yeah, the
Yeah.
one that we did about Scrap Engine's torture.
Yep. Scrap Engine's Torture got 1.9 thousand views in 3 days.
Yeah, in less than 2 days, or what was it 3 hours or something like that? I had like 100 and something viewers in less than 3 hours. It was crazy.
Mm.
I don't know how they do that. I don't know how the viewers do it, unless it's to do with how many we subbed. I don't know. But still, it's a good intrigue to see where we're going with this.
It really exploded. It did.
It just
I
goes.
was very surprised.
It is. It just goes to show that we can. It's a crazy fandom, man. Like, it's good and bad, but nowadays people are not judging. They just love what they're seeing, and they're just exchanging information. And some people are coming back remembering 7 years ago when they first watched my films, and they say they
Mhm.
still remember. They get nostalgia. It's quite funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised because one of your parts for the Timothy story got what 2.5 million views. So I'm really not surprised. Something like that.
Well, this is awkward.
Tom Tom. Tom Tom the tank train. Shomish. Shomish.
Shomish, you are a really useful engine.
Shomish, you are very naughty.
Oh, fuck you, sir. I don't give a damn.
What the fuck you say to me, you stupid little boy? I'm gonna
Yeah, that's
buy
right. I called you a fat fuck.
donuts. Go to the Tesco and get me some donuts.
Rubbish. You're too fat that you need exercise.
You've caused confusion and delay, Thomas. Chicky wow wow, chicky wow wow. Chicky wow wow.
Hey guys, sorry if I was gone for a second. It's just my parents have just come back.
No, you're right.
Anyways, yeah, I did have like my Timothy had like 1 point, whatever it was, and of course, Ginger Jesus has left. He has he has flown into the sun, as he likes to say.
He has slowly gained conscience and risen from the grave into the sunlight.
Yes, he has. Oh, good lord! Oh, Special Funnel is here with us. Again, like I said, but a lot of people keep remembering. They have some good nostalgia, and some of them are still scared to die about it, but they love it still.
Mm-hmm.
Even the 311 film is still getting good comments. Like, I had one who did it a month ago, which was well praised. especially with two all involved. So it kind of makes me wonder. It kind of makes me wonder, I mean, the others may not want to care anymore. I don't really, but at the same time, they should understand that despite, all the shenanigans that happened backstage in the production, let's just say that, it was still a good film.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, it was just disappointing what happened behind the scenes. That's, that's all I would say because I don't want any negative feedback coming on. I'm just saying, it's just one of those bittersweet films that it was good doing, but yeah. And I kept bearing the brunt of it, and it sucks to be the one to be blamed for nearly everything. But I wasn't going to be, I've explained many times it wasn't always my problems or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but in any cases, though, you were saying something, Ash, while I was gone because I wasn't there. For
Oh
a second.
no, we were just talking about the Thomas model that Tommy
Okay.
has. Yeah, we weren't really talking about much.
Yeah, but like I said, it was really, really good to see how far we've come now. But like I said, I do feel the fandom is getting back on its own 2 feet, and there's been more good now than ever. I do feel there's a big turnaround going around, and there doesn't seem to be any, traditional, dramaing that's making people all question each other, and all just
Except
getting out
for
each
some
other's
people,
throats.
that is.
There are some that are going on, but it's not having an impact anymore as much because it's like people have either decided to just ignore or just go away. But
Mhm.
yeah, it does feel like that's all kind of, quieting down a little bit, which is even better.
Mhm.
So many cases, Ash, I can see there's like on your icon, there's if I'm not mistaken, is that some sort of a diesel I see in the background?
That is Diesel. Yeah.
Oh, Devious Diesel?
Yeah.
Previously before he becomes a good guy or whatever the case may be.
This was after he got sent away the first time.
Oh,
This is probably like on the other railway and someone. I don't know. Something like
somewhere,
that.
somewhere near like in Barrow.
Yeah.
Because that's the only part of the UK we've ever come across within the Thomas series, despite London and other places. But
Mhm.
Barrow does seem to be the more common ground.
Mm.
Yeah.
He's just plotting his revenge,
Oh God, revenge he was never going to get.
Oh well, he nearly got it in. Diesel does it again, but he messed it up. So.
That was back in season 3. Yes, he
Mm.
did, but yeah, yeah. Or you could say he almost got it, in sort of in terms of like when Doug had his accident in the barbershop thing, but
Mm.
yeah, but still, obviously. So, in any cases, is that like going to be something that you're going to plan to do? Perhaps, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know, honestly. I have gotten a few more diesels of recent, so
Oh,
maybe.
nice. Oh, nice. So you got others besides him.
Mm. I've got a class 47 and a class 28.
Oh, nice.
So yes.
I'm still looking forward to the collaborating we might have that you might have for your ideas, which aren't Thomas related. So I know. So I'm definitely am looking forward to that as well. If if we've got anything planned or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
just let
And
me
I'm
know.
also
And because I'm still working on, even though we're talking about the J50 Thomas modeling, I'm still playing for another version that we could collaborate on with, like when Thomas is around, and then he could see another version of who he was.
mm-hmm.
We can make that kind of dark almost, as if there's another engine, but he's in a different form.
Mm.
Like we're not going to go into like Shed 17 referencing, but it's kind of like a scenario where he does like whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Mom, just talking with my mates. I got it now, mate.
I've got to go. I've got. Sorry, 3 times.
I'm just going to close the door for a second. So that's oh, Nick the K2 Productions is here. That's nice. He's one of the guys who was commenting on my video anyway. Speaking of that, I'm just going to hit my share screen so you can see what I was talking about. There we go. Like, there's been many versions of Thomas's J50 over the years, but like I said, the internet kind of got it more recognizable. But I do believe in the trains era, it does seem like there's getting more and more of a good following.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as you can see here in the imageries, like,
I can see an all engines go version.
yes, that we don't talk about, okay? Cough, cough.
All
We do
right.
not talk about
All
that.
right.
Okay?
Gross.
Yeah, the one that blew the fandom out of the water. Or as Brandon would say, I think we created another universe, which
Yeah.
we did do. Like I
It's
said,
gonna be Spider-Man No Way Home all over again.
yeah, oh God, we don't want to go that far, mate. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, like we've seen many versions, and I think this is quite cool. I mean, that's a good version of a DNOT user who did Thomas's J50, which looks pretty nice.
Yeah.
But as we all know, prior to the J50 version of Thomas, I mean, that's what he first looked like when Reverend W. Audrey built him in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the origin of who Thomas was. And of course, that model's been lost, but somebody actually made a new version of it, like this version, except it's got a face on him, which does look
Yeah.
pretty accurate. And I will admit, I do like the livery on Thomas. And of course, there's another version which has, like, he's got the rolling stock with him, and it looks really, really good, even before he had any in Cloudbell.
Mm-hmm.
Except the only difference is in my version, he doesn't have, like, a brake coach. He's got like full of passengers and that filled up with all kinds of stuff. And then he has like a brake van at the end because I'm not a big fan of, trains that don't go without something to back them up.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many variations, but I do believe that the wooden railway version that they did was quite nice.
Yeah.
That was kind of accurate. Like this one here is very, very good. Like this is how I understood what he had. So this is kind of like what we're seeing him like in the video that we saw, except it's slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, guys, would you like to give me your personal thoughts on what variation of Thomas is better, like this version or his J50 variation or whatnot?
Hey, look, even your picture's right there. Go up a bit. Your picture showed up.
I know.
Yeah.
That one there, yeah, to give you guys separation, and I've done this before on my streams, like that's the official version when we reach 80 years. But the one that you saw in my adapted video is set in on a different timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said before, I was just messing up with it, but this would be the best I'll ever do. So yeah, this is going to be like what he will look like from now on for the rest of my railway series because a Reverend W. Audrey, and he needs to be recognised. It's just something I feel like he needs to be remembered by.
Mm.
Again, what do you personally think of the J50 Thomas compared to what he is in E2?
It is a good twist on the original character. It is a good twist.
Yeah. There it is. That's kind of similar to what Thomas would have looked like had he been made. I mean, there's the wooden version of him. Whoops. Just ignore that. I mean, it's a shame I never got a chance to get this when I saw it in the UK stores. I never got a chance to see this because it never showed up in our stores.
Mm.
Is it like rare?
It would be, but they didn't show it. Like they had this version, which had this version because of the wheels looking, and then the other one is showing with the with this form instead, where it has like the metal studs on it.
Yeah, I think they're like nails.
Or whatever the case they did. I just don't understand why they never bothered showing it in our stores in the UK, where I was. Like, there's even this one, as we all know. This one was another good version I was intending to use because it looks pretty good
Yeah,
on very
by the
obvious.
Dirty Train one.
Yeah, but that came with like a 2-pack of Thomas as well. And it did look again very, very accurate to Audrey's version at the time. I still got it somewhere. This one, as we all know, yeah, that was again pretty cool and obvious. But there's been two versions of that version. Like Thomas had number one there, but he had like different windows, and still had number one on his side or whatever it was. There was just so many different versions, I couldn't tell which one was official. And then all of a sudden, as we
Mhm.
all know, and all of a sudden, as you all know, this one is the one that a lot of fans can barely find. It's become super rare now. This is the one that you saw in my video. This is the one that I
Mhm.
think, to me, is the best version that would have been for the television series. And of
Yeah.
course, I feel like this is the one that we're going to see when compared to mine. I just feel like this one is like an ultimate gift, and it should be recognizable if anybody wanted to use a TVS J50 Thomas
Mm.
while sticking to
Mhm.
the Railway series material of telling stories.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just feel like it's time that he needs to be recognized. It's time to bring Audrey's Thomas, not the E2, but the J50 to life.
Yeah.
And it's time to get creative with him. It's time that he deserves some stories to be told. Like many guys could say, like, he had this before he had to build into an E2, which I think makes more sense. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter what universe he's in. He's still going to be Thomas, our beloved little tank engine.
Mhm.
Mm.
I mean, that's a very clever editing effect, and I think that would have looked cool as well.
That one is so big. That is a
Yeah,
massive one.
that's the only thing I do
It's
find
like
annoying.
the Hornby Thomas.
Yeah, pretty much.
Almost it does, yeah. I do like the fact how the head and body coordinates very well with the editing. I mean, that's very cleverly done, and the steam effects. It did, but yeah, the number one does need to be cut down. It could have been just placed on his tender near his bunker and just had the words NWR on his side tanks. Easy.
Mm.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of where we're heading with this.
Hmm. Well, I have to go. Sorry, because it's really late where I am, and I have to go to
That's
work soon.
that's all right, Ash. It was nice to see you pop in. You saw where I was, and I thought nice of you to pop in.
Yeah, no, all good.
Again, in the weekend, my 311 thing might be ready by then, and we
Okay.
will have as much fun as we could. We'll have as much fun as we can.
Hmm.
We might do it in two parts, maybe, depending on what I'm going to do.
Yep.
And everybody can be free to ask their questions and just drop in and have some fun.
Hmm. All right.
You know,
All good. I'll catch you guys later.
catch you later, Ash,
See yous.
and you too, pal. So, anyways, Tommy, do you want to give me your opinions about the J50 Thomas compared to how he was in the TVS?
I mean, it's quite fascinating to know what what he should be look like, and considering it just got my interest most likely. I mean, back in the days, like ever since the streaming of Legacy, but I'm just gonna say this. Pretty much, but then ever since people have been complaining about the E2s and like that, it just really got me annoyed because I'm okay with Thomas who he is as an E2, like that.
I'm fine with him too as well. Ever since Thomas has been around, it's just okay. It says here, of course, his prototype background, he existed as a wooden toy made for his son Christopher, as we all know. And of
Yeah.
course, he had he was a J50 and he carried the letters NW, which stood for nowhere, according to Audrey. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't have stood for a Northwestern, you know. So perhaps that was what it was like before the whole thing was created, in theoretically, perhaps.
Mhm.
Whereas in this case, it would still mean, even though it was stood for nowhere, basically it would be just for short for a Northwesterner instead of saying a Northwestern Railway.
Yeah.
That's just my theory of it, to be quite honest.
Look who's here.
And I see, yep, I see him. I see him. I see him, yeah. Special Funnels here, Billy Duds is here, but I don't see anybody else.
In the chat.
Oh, hey, Astro Boy, nice to see you. You know, I might put him in if he wants to join. Just ignore the clanging, that's my next door neighbour.
Mm.
Yeah, clashing a lot of glass balls around. It's bin day today, so we've got to get the rubbish out.
Mm.
Yes, it has been a while, Astro Boy. If you want to pop in, I'll just give you the link. There you go, pal. I'll put your share screen up, Tommy, if you want. There you go.
Thanks. Pretty much, you've been saying about what Thomas's basis could actually be.
Well, we all know he was
Well,
a J. Well, we all know he was an E2 and a J50, but some people have even mistaken him as a Terrier.
Yeah. To me, I feel like this would Thomas would actually look like as
Oh,
a
really? So,
GER J68, because Thomas has a second window next to his cab. So pretty much, I guess this would be what Thomas would look like. And
and
also, it
he's
also
got
says LNER.
it does, yeah, London Northeastern, and of course you can see the side rods are very similar to his J50 E2 as well in the railway series frame.
Yeah. This is pretty much like my basis. If anyone's complaining that my OC is pretty much an E2.
Oh, nice. So if this is what your OC would look like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Love
ever
that.
since with the whole hatred towards the E2s, I'm pretty much worried about myself, so I went for this engine. It's
That's
pretty much
fine.
like Thomas.
That will perhaps
And the-
avoid. That's going to help avoid, perhaps. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it doesn't really matter. If anybody, like, we've had this OC drama in the past, which I avoid a lot with. I mean, we say Brandon's an E2, and, you know, we call him the Canadian E2, and no one has a problem with it. You know, we've seen it
Yeah.
because he's Canadian. And of course, you have, you know, Timothy and multiple Thomases, and we've seen some really good ones, like, and not and some not best ones, but it doesn't really matter. It's just their expression of who they would like to be. I mean, Brian's had many forms. I mean, heck, I've had myself as Gordon's class, and I was a mixture of Henry and Gordon, but I was never an E2 to begin with. Although, if I ever was to be, I probably would have, you know, it wouldn't really matter to be quite honest. It's just an OC, guys. You know, for those of you who don't understand, just accept it. It's just what we like to be called. It doesn't really matter what versions we use. That's just
Yeah.
it. So just shove the hatred down the toilet and just accept it, dudes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did, Astro. I remember we talked about that. Yeah, that was really cool.
Mm.
Okay, Vesper, I'll just put you in. Okay.
Hello.
Hey, lads. Nice to see you in. Like I said, it was really, really clever with the whole thing. But at the same time, I don't know how the people would have approached Thomas's J50 because maybe it wasn't popular among the public. Who knows? I mean, I've seen all the early illustrations where Thomas was still there as well. But at the same time, you know, in the early illustrations, it just didn't last very long. It even says here, according to the wiki, it said, like, you know, that Thomas was painted blue with yellow lining. And of course, Christopher lost the model, although it was recreated in the 70th anniversary, which was back in 2015, which was quite nice. And of
Yeah.
course, however, though, Audrey was happy to endorse Payne's account that the locomotive was an LBS B2 E2, and at first Thomas was on, you know, Audrey's model railway from Stratford Ruffin lagged extended side tanks, and It says here that in 1979, in the Thomas Annual, the Reverend Rose, he bought Thomas in 1948, and he was writing Tank Engine again, and wanted to start modeling once after a lapse of some 20 years. Thomas was one of Stuart Rutherford's standard models and was a heavy
Yeah, I actually did seen Trainboy's history of Thomas and the
yeah.
models.
It says like he was like heavily was heavy. The models were very heavy, casted with a white metal body, and were fitted with his SR chassis and motor.
And he's very old.
It is. Stuart Rutherford was dead, and his motors, let alone spare parts, have had for him. They've been unobtainable for years, but but for some reason, Thomas still keeps going. He
Yeah.
is, and it's like he's saying he is, as you might expect from his age, a temperamental old gentleman and has been driven really carefully indeed.
Yeah.
That is quite strange. It's almost like in a way Thomas, from that perspective, has grown from a very little immature child to a well-grown gentleman into a very respectful
Old man.
elderly he's like an elderly old gentleman from this perspective, from what we're seeing here, and he's still going. I find that to
Mm.
be kind of like that
And
funny.
especially the
That's
whole
really
thing
cool.
about Henry, the controversies of Henry, and Henry's model was found in the Italian railway by a staff there.
It was. Yes, Billy
Funny.
does, we know.
Funny, man.
Yeah. It's just a strange. It's sad that Audrey never liked Henry's model because it kept breaking down. But it all make perfect sense to
think-
follow his.
I think that's. I'm pretty sure that I think that's what inspired Audrey to like make his old shape.
That may
Yeah.
be true. It might be actually, from what I'm reading, it does say that.
Mhm.
Speaking of in Japan, they've even made Thomas in a JNR Class C11 train.
Yeah.
That's pretty big for an engine of his size, but at the same time, that's just them, I guess.
Yeah. For the Day Out with Thomas events.
It does kind of work out. Although I do kind of find it hilarious though that since then Thomas has been very popular, but again his J50 form has never been seen outside in the popular culture, besides the trains industry that we're a part of. It does say in the video games, however, this is kind of what I find, which is a little quote unquote batshit crazy. Video gamers have modified Thomas and other characters. He used replacing him as a boss character, which is kind of strange. One of the first popular ones was replacing dragons and with engines and something called the
Oh
Elder.
yeah, from Skyrim.
Yeah, the Elder Scrolls Skyrim in 2013. That was
Yeah.
bizarre.
Really useful dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it says Thomas since then has been incorporating other games. Like I couldn't believe they put him
Then
in
we
an
got
adult.
Thomas, Percy, James, Gordon, and the Troublesome Trucks, and an American train.
Yeah, they even did him in Sonic the Hedgehog and in the 2019 Resident Evil 2 remake. And then the one thing I will never accept, even though it happened, it was a bit silly at the time. They actually put Thomas in Grand Theft Auto 5, and I'm like, what? And I literally remember being
Except
outraged.
the model from that train that they switch is pretty much a wind-up Thomas, but with Henry's face.
What's next? Are they gonna put like a 311 in Grand Theft Auto 5? What's next?
Oh Jesus! It's bad. Look, Jesus! It's bad enough to do it with the Titanic and put that in a Grand Theft Auto at one point. And it did Star Wars as well. Oh man, no. Actually, you know what? I think a Star Wars Grand Theft Auto would be quite hilarious doing a parody version of it. I think that
Except
would be
you have
so fun.
mods about the gigantic spaceships.
Yeah, and you have the bad guy, the guys who we play could be stormtroopers or former rebels, who knows? Oh, jeez, it'd be hilarious. It'd be quite funny, actually. I don't know why, just for a laugh, just to make a bit like in the movie Kick-Ass, I guess.
Oh yeah.
That could be a fun time, but it's not as serious. Like a parody.
Let's not forget that Thomas also did make an appearance in the 2015 Marvel movie Ant-Man.
Oh Jesus! Look, I remember that, and I just remember thinking, I was like, what the yeah, literally, I'm not joking, I literally shat myself, and I was basically like, Marvel, are you effing serious? Mattel's going to kick your ass for it. But literally, I was literally thinking to myself, what on earth are they thinking? I'm like, what now? Is Disney going to obtain the rights of Thomas? Like, well, maybe for the classic series, yes, but not for the modern. I was like, no, please don't. Because I literally thought that the fandom was going to crack from that. I mean, it was good for a laugh, but first time I saw it, I was like, what the F?
Mm.
And now I can see it's become a funny meme now. I can get that.
Yeah. Thomas the Dank Engine.
Yes, Billy did. We even remember that, the 1953. That was a terrible remake that they did of, because, at least they gave an attempt, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
That was back when the BBC were trying to showcase Audrey's stories to make it real.
Once an engine was attached to a train, was afraid of a few drops of rain. The points weren't sent right, and he came up with a fright, and a hand came back on again.
I will admit, though, that is quite hilarious. That is quite funny, though. That is still funny and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like it was basically like an outtake of the line.
Yeah.
Which I will accept. Maybe for a blooper, that yes.
Here's the real question. Who even put that set of points there in the first place?
Probably some stupid crew members.
Yeah, some blockhead who didn't kind of, I don't know, didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
They could have put buffers then to stop the, derailment of the accident.
I think those are like track points. If you remember, like one of those annual stories by Christopher Audrey, where it tells about the railway, about they stop engines from runaways like that.
Indeed. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it says here, though, it does say today, though, like I said, hang on, again, the whole thing is like in Thomas the Railway series, we've always seen him being he's been made different variations of him. He's been described to this day still, he was according to the whole thing, everybody's been doing their own version of when did Thomas first arrive, but it's official that he did come in 1950, and I think a lot of us can accept the fact, during wartime he was there, and I still believe that to be canon still, because he arrived on Sodor shortly after being built.
Yeah. And it was due to wartime mix-up.
Yeah, I still believe
the LBSCR written him off as lost the war.
I still want to believe that too as well, but it says here Falcontrol bought him as a normal sum to be a pilot engine at Vickerstown, which did happen. It says he was intentionally as a station pilot in the first 3 books and in number 2, but longer and more important jobs, such as going to Express and his experience prevented all of that. And of course, by the full story, he rescued James and was given his own branch line. And of course, that was when he was still young, but he's kind of got more experienced.
Mm-hmm. He was also a dick.
Jesus Christ, yeah. Well, Thomas was I wouldn't say Thomas was a young, well, not that, but I think he was kind of an inexperienced, cheeky little son of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of an arrogant. Yeah, but I think, to be quite honest, if anybody was being a dick nowadays, part of my friends, I don't usually say that very often. But I think I think it's common that James the Red Engine's been that way in recent times.
Yeah.
Yeah. For any cases, though, but like I said before, I mean, it would make sense if Thomas was a J50. I still think, personally, he would have been a pilot engine to begin with. And then over time, he just got more experience, and then maybe he got what he needed, and maybe got an overhaul. Like, there was this dude here who kind of, like I said, Lucy Dollar did one of Thomas and Friends, being a J50. If anybody wants to,
I think I've made like a day out with Thomas OC kind of this.
Yeah, it's got Gowan's face on him.
Hey,
Yeah.
I gotta go to sleep now. Thanks for letting me in.
Okay,
See you,
guys.
Tommy Trains.
Take care, Tommy Trains. We'll see you another time.
Yeah, good day.
For those of you who want to see this, I've left a link in the private chat so you can watch the story of how Thomas was a J50, but how he got turned into an E2, which is another classic theory, which I thought was quite nice. But I'm going like for a modern day style. Why am I using the J50 Thomas? Is because it's time that we saw him in the modern world, or in an alternative universe where he always has been that way. But it's going to be a very intriguing story when we get there. Oh.
By the way, I think you should add Billy Judd in here because I think he wants to join. So
Billy Judd's left again, I think. Yeah, he's gone. I'm going to wrap this up in a moment now anyway because I'm reaching my time limit. I'll catch you guys maybe at another time. But like I said, when we get to this whole, Thomas J50 thing I'm doing, you're going to be interested because I'm doing like a 4-part story with this, and then eventually it will play out very similar to what we've always seen. But there are going to be some other engines who might look a little different compared to what you may be very familiar with, and it's going to be very, very good. Personalities might be a little different, and of course, it's going to be very, very cool. I know I'm going to be in there, but I'm not going to say who I'm going to be voicing because I'd like to keep that secret and be surprised to a lot of you guys. But trust me, it will be a very intriguing time as we progress on. And I think everybody in the fandom should latch onto this and should take notice because it might be very, very refreshing, for the fandom to see what could have been, and I think it will be like the ultimate tribute that Reverend W. Audrey would have always wanted. So with that being said, that wraps up the stream about why am I going to be using a J50 Thomas. I'm sorry we went over some shenanigans and other talks off topic, but that's what you're going to expect when you're on my streams. And it is done either for seriousness or for fun or for anything else. But besides all that, though, I hope you enjoyed this stream, and I'll catch you maybe later on in the weekend for my 311 special. Take care, everybody. It's KFan701. See you again maybe in the weekend. Take care, my friends. Until then.